Well, good evening. It's my great fortune to have this opportunity to be here and to be president, at least for the next 4 days, Alice, of the AAAS. I have several people I'd like to thank. First off, the AAAS members of the sections and divisions and the scientific program committee who put together this magnificent program here in San Diego. I'd also like to thank Chancellor Fox and, while he's not here, co-chair Erwin Jacobs for serving as co-chairs with me. And a personal thanks to the members of the AAAS executive group, Alan, Gretchen, Ginger, Barbara, thanks so much. Now, 2010 is also a celebration year in science. This is the 25th anniversary for the Educational Reform Committee 2061 of the AAAS. And as mentioned, this is the 50th anniversary of the founding of UC San Diego. And I have to say, this really is the model for the 21st century university. You gotta love a university that makes science a priority, yet will still name the library after Dr. Seuss. So if you have any free time, please go check out the statue of the Cat in the Hat. 60th anniversary of the National Science Foundation funding for discovery, but all those are very recent events compared to the 350th anniversary of the Royal Society, and Lord Martin Rees will be here from London for this meeting. So we have much to celebrate. Now, I was given absolutely, no instructions about what to talk about. And so I thought I would talk about one aspect of bridging science and society. Some of you may recognize this bridge, by the way. That's the Victoria Falls Bridge linking Zimbabwe and Zambia. I think we have a big challenge in science because the public often views us as nerd-like individuals in lab coats, consumed with equations, data-driven, and actually less than the humans and the passionate humans that scientists really are. So I decided that I would use this time as a presidential address really to give a pep talk by talking about the people in science. And as all of us in science realize, this includes young people. Perhaps like music, you cannot excel in this area unless you get into science very young. And for that, the very early teachers, parents, and inspiring individuals are so important. I think scientists have heroes. They have mentors, they have colleagues, and if successful, they will have labs of their own with trainees, students. And we'll always keep in mind the public, both as a source of support and the group to which we should direct our work as service. So what I have planned for you is to share sort of my Facebook of science by telling you about some of the scientists I've known over my career and how they've helped me as an illustration of one scientist's personal journey. So we're a nation of immigrants. Very few Americans are the descendant of the Native Americans, and even they came here 10,000 years ago or so. And my family came from Norway in the end of the 19th century as farmers, but put an emphasis on education and science. The first real scientist in our family was my dad, Agre, a Ph.D. in organic chemistry from the University of Minnesota, who was a corporate scientist at DuPont and 3M, but also became a college professor at St. Olaf College and Augsburg College in Minneapolis. So growing up in this family, I had the great fortune of very early in life seeing science firsthand. Dad would invite my brothers and me up to his laboratory to do little experiments. They really weren't experiments. He knew exactly what was going to happen. But imagine as a 6-year-old taking a drop of a colorless solution that looks like water, dropping it into another solution and having it turn bright pink. It was like magic, but science is different than magic because it has a natural explanation. It made it very beautiful, seeing the reactions of the alkali metals, sodium making a bright yellow flare, potassium reacting with water, creating a brilliant violet pink flare. It was hard not to be interested in science, and I think it was about the 2nd or 3rd grade when I recall our teacher asking us to draw a picture of what we'd do with our lives, what we would be when we grew up. I drew a picture of a scientist. Dad was the chairman of chemistry. He was my hero. Although I couldn't help noticing that sitting beside me, Jay Peterson, whose dad was a professor of biology, and Jay was drawing a picture of a burglar. And I always wondered, did he become a lobbyist? A congressman? No, he actually became a biologist like his dad. So our family had very special occasions together. Mother, who was never had the opportunity to get a college education, read to us. We really were broadly educated. And Dad emphasized science. So shown here, my brother and I, on the evening we received our Eagle Scout Awards, I have to mention the first merit badge Jim and I each received was, of course, chemistry. Guess whose idea that was? Now, growing up in a large family, it also became clear that life isn't always fair. And shown beside, let me see if I can point here. Oops, that's not a. Are two individuals who've had really difficult lives. My sister Ruth, well, the pointer is hard for me. I'll just ignore the pointer. Who as a child was diagnosed as having a variant of the Tourette syndrome and impulse control problems. And my brother Paul on the far right was developmentally disabled, low intelligence, motor dysfunction. And it was always emphasized to us that we should do something useful to the less fortunate in life. Now, Dad also was a real enthusiast of science. In 1957, in response to the Sputnik, he wrote a National Science Foundation fellowship to do a sabbatical at the University of California, Berkeley. So we packed up the old station wagon. We must have looked like a Norwegian equivalent to the Beverly Hillbillies as we drove off to Berkeley, California, where we had a really exciting time, very different from Northfield. Berkeley was a science mecca. And of course, as youngsters, we heard Dad talk about some of the well-known scientists that he became acquainted with, both at Berkeley and elsewhere in California. And one individual made a particularly strong impression, Linus Pauling, who Dad served on the Committee on Education for the American Chemical Society. And it was quite obvious as youngsters that Pauling was a hero of Dad's and became a hero of ours. He stayed with us. We got to know him. Now, Pauling is well known, both for his brilliant discoveries and for some of his less than brilliant mistakes. But there's a story I'd like to share about Pauling that's probably not so well known, because it was Pauling, a great physical chemist, who was the discoverer of the first molecular disease. While sharing a train compartment with William Castle, shown on the far right, a hematologist at Harvard, as scientists will, they talked about science. And Castle told Pauling about a very interesting disease he was unfamiliar with, affecting African Americans, causing painful crises, and characterized by red blood cells which would become misshapen, sickle-formed when deoxygenated. Pauling intuitively leaped to this and concluded this must represent a structural alteration of the hemoglobin molecule, and decided he would approach this. Now, in order to do that, his lab was full, he was very busy. He needed to recruit a student. And he recruited this gentleman, Harvey Itano, shown here as a youngster, who had a very interesting career. Itano is retired, living here in San Diego. He was a summa cum laude graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, but as you might be able to tell, he's a Nisei, a first-generation Japanese-American, who, despite graduating with the highest honors, was ushered directly from classroom to the Thule internment camp because of his Japanese ancestry. Thule is not San Diego. This is up east of Shasta Mountain, and it must have been a very bitter winter there in these uninsulated cottages. But being intrepid and enthusiastic about science, he petitioned to attend medical school if he left the West Coast and attended the university, or St. Louis University, and following this, decided he wanted to do a degree in chemistry to be a research physician. It was Itano who joined Pauling, and together discovered sickle cell hemoglobin, the cause of the first well-known molecular disease, sickle cell anemia. And I won't go through the specifics here, but a very interesting observation wherein a brilliant scientist still needed the help of others. Again, and personal contact is so important in science.